And we are back moments after our discussion of light and shadows to come to you once again on Starfleet, where we have a casual and informal conversation about Star Trek. Today we're focused on Star Trek Discovery's latest episode, which just aired on Thursday night, called If Memory Serves. And Fathery, as promised, you get to give the... so go for it.
I'm pulling my notes up now. If you want to vamp for a little bit, and then I'll jump into the summary.
I just want to, since this is an isolated video, I want to thank you gentlemen again for joining me. We're joined here by PJ and Sean, respectively, PJ's channel. PJ, I'll ask you offline, but I was following a different PJ, I think, and thought it was you until you told me about PJ's channel, and then I was like,
on Twitter or on YouTube?
On YouTube. Really weird.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. There's a few channels called PJ's channel. So
the whole time I was like, God, that guy doesn't post any videos. And then I looked at your real channel and I was like, oh. So that was a mistake on my part. But the true link will be in the description below. And then Fathery from Text Trek.
Howdy.
Back and joining us. Howdy. And of course, Sean from Trek on the Tube, who we've established, aka as Daddy on the Tube. So hello, Daddy. All right. So are you ready yet, Fathery? Did I wax enough there?
Yeah, that was good. So
all right.
I'll just go ahead and jump into the summary of Star Trek Discovery Season 2, Episode 8, I believe, right? If memory serves.
If memory serves, it is Episode 8. It's an opportunity there. Anyways, go on. Sorry.
So the episode opens with a really awesome recap of Star Trek, the original series, The Cage. And for all the people out there who, for a long time, we're saying that Star Trek Discovery is contractually not allowed to be in the same timeline as the previous Star Trek shows. So it turns out that this is like a PG-13 YouTube channel, so I can't say like my true.
You can drop one. You're allowed to drop one. I think 1 or 2 F-bombs, and then you can say the B word as much as you want.
Well, all those people, all those dishonest assholes on the internet can go fuck themselves. Because Star Trek Discovery is totally in the same frickin', I'll say frickin' like Tilly, the same frickin' timeline as The Cage and the Menagerie, as established in the opening of this episode. But they basically explained to us that, in case you missed those episodes, they explained to us that Captain Pike and Spock and Number 1, the Enterprise crew, had visited this world of Talos 4, where they beamed down and they met this beautiful woman, Vina, who is, it turns out, the prisoner of the Telosians, these big brain, butthead-looking aliens that wear metal gowns with like these cool little medallion bling necklaces they got on. And they attempt to take Captain Pike as a prisoner to be the Atom to Vina's Eve and repopulate their planet with a race of humans. They offer him a life in their menagerie where he would be able to live out any fantasy they could telepathically create for him. However, he says a cage is no place for him. He wants to leave the planet. He offers to take Vina with him, but she is actually, I use the term fugly on Text Trek to describe her actual appearance. Her beauty was a Telosian illusion, so she stays behind.
She's like messed up, and she needs them to survive. She can't live outside of.
We'll be back after the episode summary. Just 2
seconds.
Go. Okay. So then we have.
John we can skip the summary. God damn it! No,
well, he's seen the episode. But
no, he's no. I'm just kidding.
Then we have Section 31 back in the modern day of Star Trek Discovery, picking up where last episode left off. They're still hunting for Micheal Burnham and Spock. The 2 siblings arrive at their destination of Talos 4, the planet that Spock visited previously on Star Trek on The Cage. And they meet Vina there. She's still on the planet. She takes them down underground to meet the Telosians, and they promise to get all of Spock's marbles back in alignment for a price. They want to relive Burnham and Spock's childhood and explore their memories, because that's what Telosians do. And luckily for the audience, we also get to go on this telepathic journey and unearth some backstory on these characters. We get all these flashbacks. We see Spock as a child visited by the Red Angel on the night that Michael ran away from home. We learn that the Angel did, in fact, reveal her location to Spock, and that's how they were able to save her as a kid when she was running off through the forest. She was trying to escape her home so that the Vulcan logic extremists that tried to blow her up at her school wouldn't attack her family. We also see some stuff of Spock just a few months earlier. I guess when he was serving on the Enterprise, the Red Angel returned to him and led him to this snowy ice world where Spock attempted to mind meld with the Red Angel, because that's what Spock loves to do. He'll mind meld with anything weird and dangerous. V'ger, Nomad, the Horta, the Red Angel. And
he just loves doing that shit. And this time it scrambles his mind. He loves it.
Yeah, this mind meld does show to him a vision of the galaxy having all life wiped out, of these high-tech weapons devastating planets, including Earth. So Spock checks himself into the psychiatric ward at Starbase 5 that we knew about, and there he made his escape. He didn't actually kill anyone, though. He just used the Vulcan neck pinch, but he escaped because he knew Section 31 was coming to question him about the red burst after the red burst he predicted that he had been drawing after they actually happened at the beginning of season 2. So that's when he went on the run. And we also see the pivotal moment in Burnham and Spock's past when their relationship took a turn for the worst. The moment that had been hinted at before, when Burnham intentionally hurt Spock so that he would stop following his big sister around. When Burnham said to him that he has no place in her life, that he is a freak, he's this weird Vulcan half-breed, he can never understand what it is to be a human or to have human emotion, and just devastated little kid Spock, and he's been carrying this grudge against Michael Burnham ever since then. And we also have a bunch of stuff happening on the ship. Back on the Discovery, we have Dr. Culber is still getting used to being back amongst the living. He doesn't feel like his old self. In fact, he says he's not really feeling much at all, except this anger at Tyler, the man who killed him and is responsible for him having these feelings of being an incomplete person. So Culber goes to the mess hall and starts a fight with Tyler. He also appears to break up with Stamets. Also on the ship, Pike is just chilling in his office, and he gets this vision of his old flame, Vina. And she says that the Telosians are trying to reach out to him, that they can briefly make contact across the stars and communicate with him. That Burnham and Spock are there. They need to talk to him. So Pike gets to talk to his Enterprise science officer, Spock. Spock says, there is a major threat to all life, and you need to come to the Talos 4 and pick us up, because this is a big deal. We have to address it. So Pike hauls ass to Talos 4, and Section 31 is right behind them. They get there at the same time because they also want Spock. They get in a transporter competition of trying to beam up Spock and Burnham. They both have a transporter lock, and Leyland tells Pike, if you don't release your transporter lock, we're going to rip these people apart atom by atom. So just back off and let me have them. So Pike appears to do so, and then we have Burnham and Spock appear on the Section 31 ship. Or do we? No, it's actually a Telosian illusion distracting them while the real Burnham and the real Spock pilot their shuttle back to the Discovery. And Pike has them on board. He welcomes Spock, who gives him a smile that we've only seen him do before when he's playing with a blue humming plant. So maybe Vulcans just smile when they get to serve under Captain Pike, because he's that good of a captain. But Spock does tell him that there's this massive threat to all life in the galaxy that the Red Angel has unveiled to him. We get confirmation the Red Angel is a human. It's a female. We don't know anything else, but there's going to be this massive extinction level event in the future, and so the Discovery has to go rogue to and investigate and pursue this mystery. And that's the end of the episode.
Well done. Well done. My biggest thing about this episode is I'm still unpacking a lot of the information that came out of this, so I don't know how I'll feel about this later on. But the biggest thing that my biggest takeaway is that like this concept of like what if what Star Trek like the story, like kind of like the question is like someone who was supposed to die is now alive, and that's Burnham, because whoever this human time traveler is that is the Red Angel, we don't know this yet, but from their perspective, Burnham was supposed to die when she like left the Vulcan, her home, and she actually, so the angel, the angel comes back and convinces Spock to stop that from happening. So there was an established timeline from the perspective of wherever the angel comes from, where Burnham died, that no longer happens. And just revisiting some of the other things, the Red Angel changes an event in World War III that we know of, changes the course of Kaminar. I can't see where it's all going, but I'm really curious, and it's like pretty exciting, and it explains so many, in my opinion, of the incongruities in Star Trek Discovery, and helps me to kind of like be like, okay, I can like understand this, because there's definitely something wrong. Something's rotten in the state of the timelines, and it's all going to be corrected, of course, by TOS. But what?
I'm not sure if they're gonna do like a big timeline alteration story. In fact, I kind of don't want them to do that, because we just did that with the Kelvin movies. But just the actual content of this episode, I loved it. This is my favorite episode of Star Trek Discovery. This is the show becoming the show I hoped it would be when they first announced they were doing this prequel series to the original series set 10 years before. I wanted to see things like, oh yeah, we can revisit all of this TOS stuff that they haven't touched on since the 60s. Things like Talos 4. This is pretty much the show I hoped for.
I filling in the gaps.
Yeah, I still love Pike. He's still like one of the greatest captains we've had. I think after the season of Discovery, he might become my second favorite captain, with the Emissary, of course, being number one. I'm the big DS9 fan. Yeah, I love.
Well, this version of Pike, which is the continuation of like the original series Pike, the Cage Pike, is delightful, because in the Kelvin timeline, we don't get Vina, we don't get Talos, none of that happens to Pike, and he dies. Like he just kind of like, so
he gets a much worse ending, because he just gets like shot up by Khan, and then I guess like Pike, I guess Spock like mind melds with him and takes his Katra, but
right.
The Discovery Pike, we know that the end of his story is he gets to live with Vina on Talos 4, and just spend the rest of his existence with this beautiful woman. So
this episode gave me the most feels because of that, like because of the connection to the cage and the menagerie.
And we also finally get to see Ethan Peck as Spock. We've been waiting all season for it, and I didn't mind waiting for Spock, because I wasn't sure if I was going to take to Ethan Peck. But this episode really sold me on him, and they're obviously doing like a little bit different version of Spock. The beard is kind of like a visual reminder that this isn't quite the Spock of the original series. This is a guy who's going to become that. But I can see myself liking this take on Spock more than Zachary Quinto, and it's not really fair to make that comparison, but I'm definitely on board with Ethan Peck.
Me too, 100%.
He's a lot less different than I thought he was going to be. I mean, he embodies the role perfectly. You can imagine that this is Spock in this particular situation, and even though he's kind of like all over the place in the last episode, when he finally starts debating doing that back and forth between him and Michael, that's classic. That's classic Spock.
The way they wrote the Spock dialogue, it felt like how they wrote for Spock in the 60s. Like there's a certain elegance to how he speaks, and everything is like so direct, and it's almost poetic in just how direct his language is chosen. Like he's so to the point, and the way that he can talk about some of the things like the little speech he gives to Burnham about how his foundations have just been shattered. He's been betrayed by time and logic and emotion, and now he has like nothing to build a foundation upon, or all that little like snippy stuff he tells Burnham about.
I wrote that quote down. I have nothing to build upon, but build I must, which is such a Spock thing.
I know it sounds like the original series,
right? It was very cool.
Like a lot of the things he would say to her that was kind of throwing shade. It reminded me of how Spock would talk to Dr. McCoy.
Yeah,
when he's like, it was foolish to idolize you, and don't try to psychoanalyze me. Greater minds than yours have tried and failed. And just like the way that he's kind of like an asshole with those insults. That was how Spock behaved on the original series.
I like when Burnham says, "What does she say? Am I a fool to be offended?" And he goes, "Agreed."
Yeah.
He's just very... It was actually pretty funny. I laughed at some point. I didn't expect to laugh at Spock, but I did like 1 or 2 times.
But she gets them back when she says, when he says, "Do you have any? What is it? Do you have
any relevant questions?
Yeah, relevant questions in your arsenal." And she says, "Yeah. Do you actually think the beard is working?"
I like that. I laughed at that. I went, ha. Got him.
That's funny.
I'm gonna skip ahead, but there's a detail that I noticed in the rewatch that. Oh, sorry. I know you want to talk, but I have to I'm just get this out.
Go ahead. I was just gonna say,
there's a detail that I noticed in the rewatch when the Discovery is speeding towards Talos and is being chased by the Section 31 ship at warp. Both of them were tilted at the angle that you have in the original series in the opening credits. Like if you notice, the Enterprise comes at you kind of like at this angle, and like that's how they were both tilted in that scene. And I really love just like whoever decided to do that. Like it was like like it gave me feels, because I was like, hey, like that feels like that era. Like maybe ships kind of at those speeds kind of tilt naturally into this like, posture or whatever. So it was cool.
It also felt like a scene from Into Darkness where the Section 31 ship is chasing.
It did remind me of that scene as well.
It looked a lot like that.
Yeah. But those ships weren't tilted. They were going straight.
Yeah, JJ should have tilted his ships.
His ships, it's true. Anyways, go on. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, looks like Sean might be disagreeing with all the enthusiasm.
Sean wants to say something.
I know. I feel like the black sheep here. I'm impressed by Ethan Peck's performance, like just the acting of it, but I'm not sold on Spock yet, because if no one had told me it was Spock, I wouldn't know it was Spock. I mean, I couldn't have guessed it.
What?
You guys say he's
You're
written
out
like
of control.
Spock. I say he's not written like Spock. He's just written like a Vulcan, because T'Pol's written the same way, Tuvok's written the same way. Every time there's a Vulcan on screen, they're the same thing. They've got this condescending assholeness to them.
But I think that's how Spock was in the original series. That's set the precedent for Vulcans to be written like that later.
I know, I do agree. It's just that this could be any Vulcan for me at this point. It doesn't necessarily need to be like, I know it's Spock because they told me, but I would never, like Chris Pine. The moment he's on screen in the Kelvin timeline, even if no one said it was Kirk, you'd know it was Kirk. But this is different. I don't feel the Spock so much. I can't wait to see him in the blue with no beard and standing next to Pike saying something like, it is time for us to get back to the Enterprise. Or something like...
I think there's a bridge that needs to be created from the cage, even though the cage was intended as a pilot and not necessarily like meant to be part of, the whatever canon or whatever. But like, I think there needs to be a bridge between the cage and TOS, right? And I think that, like, to me, Ethan Peck, that is what I'm seeing. Like, I'm seeing like this like troubled Vulcan who's like trying really hard to be a Vulcan, but he's like an uber asshole Vulcan. But then at the same time, he can't help but smile when he sees Pike, who he has immense affection for, and we know this because in the cage he works so hard to get him back to Talos, right?
Or in
So
the menagerie.
Sorry, in the menagerie. Thank you. Yeah.
And then I have no
gets-
problem
he
with
works
that. I agree with all of that.
I think
Yeah.
Spock is coming
it's just
across.
that-
I think Spock is coming across as especially prickly in this episode, just because he is talking to Michael Burnham, and they have that like troubled relationship.
Right,
Because when he gets
clear
on the bridge and
yeah.
he starts talking to Pike, he sounds like regular ass Spock.
I suppose
I
that's
think-
because he's so out of context for the moment. Like
Yeah,
he's such in a non-Spock kind of situation, and I don't know. It's different.
But that's great. I think
Ethan
that
Peck's
makes
voice
sense.
is clearly deeper as well. I can hear it. I don't.
Yeah, but I feel like it's not fair to. So here's how I look at it. Like, Leonard Nimoy is the definitive how like many people see Spock, right? But the character should be allowed to live on, right? Like, I think that the character is
absolutely.
important enough that like you can have other actors portray him. And Peck, not exactly like I don't think he should do an impression of Leonard Nimoy. But I think he's bringing something of his own to it, and I think it's fitting for this gray area where we don't know what Spock was doing.
Well, that comes down,
and it'll
to,
transition right into Leonard Nimoy, and then we have the Leonard Nimoy Spock that we all know.
That comes down to why you enjoy Solo so much, because you don't.
Yes.
You don't care if someone does their own take on a character, whereas I disagree. I think that if you take on the role of a character that already existed, part of that acting job is to act like the other actor did. That to me is
you brought our
embodying
unpublished. I like that you brought our unpublished Solo
discussion into the mix.
Into the mix here. That's
to
awesome.
me, you need to embody the character, but you need to also embody the actor that played the character, because they're the ones that originally like defined how the character was, and you need to respect that. I agree that you can add story elements, etc.
Yeah.
But I mean,
but you don't want to.
I think he has a lot of. Go ahead.
Okay. So, you don't want to like impersonate someone else's performance. Like you don't want Chris Pine to try to do like the Shatner voice when he's playing Kirk. Like
no, but you'll notice that he is very, very Shatner when he's like Chris Pine is the William Shatner of today. He's so cool. Right?
Like
But
so cool
when-
one word? Is
when
that
he-
so cool one word? Is that so
Hashtag so cool.
cool? Like what?
When he's all like full on pulse, Mr. Sulu, you can hear the Captain Kirk, because it reminds you of William Shatner without necessarily being like a parody of William Shatner.
Right. There's no doubt that like all of those actors, the original series actors, they defined, and like to me it's like I definitely agree with you, Sean, because like I think that like personally on a very personal level, like there should be no prequels. I think keep going, right? Like this about me. I've said this before. But that being said, like giving that's why I love the books, because you get and Leonard Nimoy playing like when you have a story set in the past of TOS, if it's in a book, you get to imagine your favorite actors. So like I think, but like taking that personal feeling aside and just looking at it from a character perspective, I'm very intrigued by what Ethan Peck is doing, and I'm very interested in seeing where he's going to take this character. It's not perfect, but it can't be. You know what I mean? Like, I'm very intrigued to see what he does with Spock, because I'm enjoying his take on Spock.
I try to counterbalance what you guys are saying, because you're all very positive. But in all honesty, I think that none of us can actually truly judge Ethan Peck's Spock for the moment,
Right?
Because we haven't actually seen Ethan Peck's Spock. We've just seen like some crazy dude.
Well, I like him so far.
But I like him so. First impressions are good, in my opinion. What do you what do you say in first impressions, Sean, like of Ethan Peck?
I don't know. I think
right,
he acts well as like the crazy guy or the Vulcan, right? He's alright as the Vulcan, but he's not Spock for the moment. Not to me, anyway.
Like mind melding with the Red Angel, that didn't seem Spockish to you.
Yeah, but then but like
there's not enough.
It doesn't take a genius to say, "Hey, I've got Spock in my episode. I'm gonna make him mind meld with someone." I mean, my thoughts to your thoughts, my mind to your mind, whatever it is. Like it's
They also
it's
use
easy
that. They outuse a Vulcan line outweigh the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few.
Yeah,
Hmm.
Burnham
Since
basically
last season they've said it
acknowledges-
4 or 5 times.
Yeah, that's become the This Is Sparta of Star Trek.
Yeah,
But
I don't
that's
like
actually
them
one
using
of the-
that all the time.
But that's of logic outside of Star Trek. Like, are you guys watching that show? What is it, Omens or something like that on Netflix? I'm not
No.
sure, but like, anyways, there's a class on ethics in there, and like he talks about that concept. They talk about that concept, and I'm sorry, I'm not like educated enough to like give you guys the exact like source reference on that, so we'll have to look it up, or audience chime in the comments below. But like that is like important to remember is that despite Vulcans being like the logicians, the master logicians in Star Trek, that logic is a concept that humans came up with like independently of Vulcans. Like logic existed in human philosophy before we ever had first contact with the Vulcans. So it's not that humans are incapable of logic, and in some way humans choose not to be ruled by logic, which actually Vulcans, I think, in the original series were designed to show that like if you go too extreme in one direction, it can also be bad. So that like bringing it back to balance, you know what I mean? So like I see that presented a lot in Star Trek.
What did you guys think of the Telosians?
Love.
Do they work?
Love. I love the updates to the Telosians. I was just happy that they weren't so radically redesigned.
I would have done two things different, and this is all I would have changed from how Discovery did it. Is I would have gotten rid of like that bridge that comes up from their nose into their forehead. I just would have like flattened that down so that they had like a more human looking face below the forehead, and on the back of the head, I would have kept the little butt cheek things that they have in the cage, just as like a little in joke to the fans who have watched. Did
we even see the back of their heads in this episode though? I don't think we ever saw it.
No,
did we? Okay.
We do. You know
what's frustrating about that the fact that they show the cage and they show what it looked like then, and then the way the Telosians looked in the cage, and they just mess with it.
I actually
isn't there just one time? Isn't there just one time where they could take a classic alien and just do exactly what they did when it worked back then?
They did that with the Vulcans. They haven't changed anything.
Yeah, I know, but they're the only ones.
Why did they do that?
Why is the Telosian speaking all like a demon and stuff? Why is he sounding like the Andorian?
I don't know. Why do the Andorians have antennae that move on Enterprise, and then on the original series they look quite different?
Oh no, that's Enterprise improved on that.
I agree.
What Discovery is doing is they're adding too much.
Enterprise took the original series design and they made it modern, which is very, very different from what Discovery did to the Andorians, where they changed the genetic makeup of the friggin' race. I don't mind them. It's just that they give these new antennae. What they did to the Klingons is ridiculous. What they're doing to the Telosians is, I don't know. I don't know why they do this. This episode specifically is amazing, the way it ties into the story, and it adds so much depth to Vina, to Pike, to Spock and Burnham. It's great on all of those levels, but just changing visually the Telosians is ridiculous. My argument is the same for the flowers, by the way. I get that you want to make them look pretty, but they were very, very different.
Were they?
The way that I look at it is, and I think that this episode kind of like illustrates that by showing the footage from the original series in the cage and the pilot in that like beautifully kind of stylized opening. It gave it a comic book kind of feel to it, or whatever. Is that I think that like in some ways it's a proclamation that says like show 2019 can possibly homage to a show made in 1968 or 67 or what was
That's
it? Was
it? Rogue One disproves that.
Yeah, but like imagine the effort, and then imagine like like I
Imagine
have
the
to
effort.
say, like, from,
Well,
but
that's your
wait, but
job.
like,
Make a Star Trek show.
wait, but like also on top of that, like just imagine for a second, like, you know, trends change and things like that. It's like, again, this is the show should have been set in the future. Like it would have alleviated a lot of this like problem. But like, let's look at it from this context. It's like, how can you expect like artists, like genuine artists, like you're gonna hire the best people, you know, who are like artists to like completely acquiesce to like designs that have already been done, you know, like on TNG.
Okay, can I just say something here?
Yep, but on TNG
you're-
we see
you're-
like the Andorian in the
you're-
scene where Lal is trying to contemplate what she's gonna be. They show an Andorian that looks completely different from like the original series Andorians.
Yeah, and I would erase that scene from the figured episode because I find it fucking offensive. It's terrible.
The film Andorians in Star Trek 4 are also different. Like the Tellarites keep going through evolution.
You can have variations on the species.
Excusing the mistakes of Discovery by mistakes of the past. It's not because
it's not necessarily a mistake. It's like kind of like acknowledging that, like, hey, like maybe the thing that we're wrong about is that like visual continuity matters. Like I think story continuity is different from visual 100%. Continuity, and maybe that's the thing that we're wrong about. Maybe Star Trek has never been like wrong, has never cared about it.
Star Trek Enterprise and Deep Space Nine all tied the Klingon visuals into one huge storyline, and it essentially blended the visual continuity with the story continuity. It made it
still doesn't make 100% sense because you have Worf saying
to me, Enterprise is the first time. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, Father. Sorry.
I was just gonna say that you have Worf saying that we don't discuss it with outsiders, and Bashir and O'Brien seem to have no idea that there were ever smooth-headed Klingons ever existed. Like that doesn't quite make a lot of sense. You would think that Starfleet would be aware of what happened in Enterprise, but
yeah, but you know what? In that episode of DS9, which is like the best episode of DS9, Trials and Tribulations.
Yeah, I love it.
That acknowledgement of the difference between designs, where Odo asks and Worf responds, that's pure jokery.
Yes,
that's tomfoolery. That means nothing. It's just a way of it's a way of winking to fans and saying, listen, we acknowledge the difference. Don't worry about it. And then Enterprise just went ahead later on and decided to try to explain that. And they did it actually in a very interesting way.
Yeah, I find so also.
That should continue within the continuity of Discovery, but you know, they're not really going to go
If visual continuity doesn't count in Star Trek, then nothing counts. Then, like, if visual continuity doesn't count, then why do we even care about the tech that they use? Why do we even care about any of the science that they establish? Like, none of it matters, because part of Star Trek is the visual consistency. What made Star Trek such an amazing show is not like, yes, it's the stories, but it was like the amazement of seeing the ship. Talking to the original series, the amazement of seeing the ship, and everyone still talks about how the original series ship is like the best design ever. Apparently, friggin' some of like the U.S. Navy based some of their command centers or bridges or whatever it was on the original series bridge. So I mean, you can't just disregard any of that.
I think we all believe that there is no alternate license mandatory 25% rule, because how would you even quantify that for one thing?
False.
So I think
that all of this is creative, right? So all of these decisions are creative.
I think that the incongruities in Star Trek Discovery stand out so much that there's a reason for them, and I'm just willing.
You're convinced by that, but it's not. It will not do any timeline, like drastic timeline shenanigans.
I don't want them already. Even
I don't want them to
even in this. You're like, Father's like, change it all, burn it to the ground.
No, I want them to not change the timeline. I'm against. I'm saying just show me in the last episode of Discovery. Just show me things looking more like TOS and just
but
like build an original series set.
The timeline's already been changed. It's like, I feel like this episode kind of like hints at that, because again, from the perspective of wherever the Red Angel comes from, whatever 500 years from the future, whatever it is, Burnham was supposed to die, and that Red Angel changed that.
Here's the big plot hole here, because they established that this is the same timeline as the Cage as we saw it in the original version, But if Micheal Burnham had died and her not being around is the true timeline, so to speak, then the cage would not be the way it is. It would be a different timeline. You know what I mean? Like,
Also, remember, this timeline has to
she
exist.
can't die.
This timeline has... Go ahead.
So some people are theorizing that this is going to end where Micheal Burnham has to somehow go back, or has to be erased at that point. Like, she really has to die back in the day, and then all this bad stuff that leads to the annihilation of everybody in the galaxy doesn't happen, and that's the only way is for her not to exist. I don't believe that.
No,
because
I think
that would totally undo the entire.
I think her existence is what changes the annihilation. It's because Spock says in this episode, like, that like whatever our actions, you and me, depend on. Because Spock is realizing, like, wait, so like this Red Angel came back and changed your death for a reason, and it has to do with like not having that come to pass. So Burnham is the reason why it won't happen. That's what we're going to eventually find out why. But I think that the timelines change. And I also like that Burnham says in one scene on the bridge later, she goes, "Sir, the Red Angel is altering events in our current." Whereas I love that because it's acknowledging that, hey, like, don't make such a big deal. Time's changing all the fucking time. There's time travelers unbeknownst to us going back and doing crazy shit. So time can just change. Like, stop focusing on time.
There is no time to argue about time.
There is no time to argue
exactly
about time.
If they change the timeline, though, then I would be so mad at all the writers, all the producers, everyone who worked on Star Trek Discovery, because they have been telling us from the very beginning, they said, this is in the prime timeline. This is the same timeline as The Next Generation and DS9 and the original series.
But the paradox could be resolved before you see all that happening, and it is. So in fact, it is true that this becomes the same timeline. But right now, we're seeing it happening for the first time. If that makes from like a temporal mechanic perspective, like we're witnessing it for the first time, but ultimately it does become a part of what we know as established events.
I don't need go ahead.
I love the fact that the Kelvin timeline like exists. I love that kind of excuse that the films can exist in a separate timeline, and therefore you can have the events unfold in that way, and it can be more action, Star Trek flavored action movies. I love that. But then I feel like it's kind of brought to us this excuse now, or this budget theory craft, like plot device that everyone in the Star Trek community uses all the time now. Oh, well, now that we know that timelines exist, everything can be in a different timeline. No, shut up with that, right? It's the prime timeline, and that's it, right? Not like you can't make every season of every show a new timeline now because of this event or that event. The First Contact and Enterprise and this and God, it's all bullshit, right? Just stop with this.
I agree. I agree 100%.
It's just this is prime timeline. It's visually different because they chose to make it visually different. You can agree with it or not. Deal with it. It still is prime. Just I don't like the visual changes. Too bad for me, right?
But Sean, you agree with me? Like, you don't want them to have a timeline divergence explanation just to let us know why they had holograms on Discovery.
No. Yeah. But even like if they did that, then it would give me a reason to never watch Discovery ever again. I'd be like, that was the Discovery timeline shit. I don't need to watch that because it's like its own pocket universe. Fuck it. I'll just keep on watching all of the real show.
That's how I feel about Enterprise ending on a holodeck. So I mean, I feel like same way. It's
but then you misinterpret the finale of Enterprise. The finale of Enterprise does not establish that the entire show is on the holodeck.
I know that those events
gives importance to the characters.
Hang on,
because it shows how important they are for Riker.
What it does to me is it establishes that like whatever Enterprise events really look like, what we could have been watching is holodeck fantasy, which could have had interpretations that didn't actually exist at the time. So, for example, when Enterprise does something that's not, correct visually, I can excuse it because I'm like, it's just
devices.
No,
right, exactly, things like that. Like I can excuse that because I'm like,
none of the episodes that come before the finale have anything to do with the hologram program that Riker is running.
No, I realize that.
There's too many things that whoever programmed that holodeck picture, like they wouldn't have known that like the Romulans had like the secret base on Romulus where they were piloting the drone ship. Like there's a bunch of things in Enterprise that no one would have known about. Like no one who would have known about like
it's not a person that it's not a person
GoPro.
that puts that together, Father. I'll just remind you that the computer, the AI aboard the Enterprise D or E, whatever it was at the time, is actually putting that together from documents and historical records and visual records and things like that. So that's what's happening.
The Enterprise finale is
I wish
good.
it was a person, but it's the computer.
The Enterprise finale gives importance to the characters, right? It gives importance to the characters. It gives importance to the NX-01, and it shows how much impact and how much influence they can still have on someone like Riker so many years later. Also, they got cancelled, so they had to find a way to make this thing. Like they couldn't give you a 4-episode arc on the creation of the Federation, where they were planning on doing 7 seasons, not 4. So what they managed to do was very good for what they were given, right?
I'm not gonna say it was very good.
I hated Enterprise when it was on the air because of all this. I had similar reservations as I did with Discovery in season 1, and I have to say that like now that I'm watching Star Trek Enterprise like years later, rewatching it, I enjoy it way more because I've put aside those like personal attachments and emotions to what I expected. And unfortunately, now that The Expanse exists, I'm like, well, we should have just had that shit. That should have been like Star Trek prequel show.
Enterprise happens 100 years before, so
what's up with
time? Like things can change in 100 years. 10 years, 10 years. It's not even 10 years. Discovery has this flaw of being between the cage and the original series. So you're trapped. You can't really change. You can't really change things. Our phones used to be really big, and then they became really small, but now they're really big again in the real world. So anyway.
Yeah, but like I don't know. I think that talking about an earlier point about the universe seeming big or small, it's like up until now we've only been focused on like other with the and Deep Space Nine. Most of Star Trek is focused on the Enterprise crew, whatever they know, whatever's happening in their world. And I kind of love that Discovery just kind of has opened the universe up a little bit, whereas like these things that we couldn't think about or didn't even imagine or don't accept even to some degree are happening, like Section 31 being a big part of like the story. Like this is something that we don't expect to be happening, but it is happening, and I think it's gonna all. I have a lot of faith, to quote Spock, go with me on faith. I have a lot of faith in Discovery, mainly because of season 2. But I'm starting to like feel like okay, I'm ready. I'm willing to like aside my differences for the see where this ride is gonna go. Right.
The problem is it's clear that the problem is it's clear that Discovery didn't say this is how the original series is supposed to look like. We're going to make it this much different and gradually tweak it so it looks like the original series. It's clear that what they've done is that we're going to do this, and now they have to course correct everything, which is very different.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that that's fair.
The Enterprise kind of had a bit of that though when they started course correcting things in season 4, like making the Vulcans closer to like a traditional Star Trek Vulcan type.
It had 100 years though.
No, yeah, it worked better. It worked better then with 100 years instead of a decade.
9 years now. Counting, the clock is counting. We're in a fight for the future here, guys.
We have 8 years. 8 years before Kirk takes over the Enterprise,
and 3 years like after the Cage, or 2 years after the Cage, or whatever. So.
Yeah.
Look at that. Look at this.
It was a weird.
Sean, that facepalm needs to be turned into a GIF. That needs to be turned into someone turn that into a GIF because that was just like.
I'm gonna go take a screenshot of that, and I'm gonna use that.
That was so good.
Whenever I want to facepalm someone on Twitter, I'm gonna use a screenshot of Sean.
That's like so good.
For the record, I like this episode. I really do.
What about the evil admiral scene with in the like? What do you guys? What's that all about? What's going on? Khan. That was Badmiral Khan 2257. Badmiral Khan. Why do we need 4 admirals? Like, what was the deal?
There was one of each species. There was one of each race. One of each founding member.
It's interesting. Yeah, that was so like on the nose though. Be like, here's one of everything. Like
I like the Tellarite. He was very clean cut. Like we've seen, all of them look like space pirates until now on Discovery. This guy wasn't. Right? He had he was bald. He didn't have like a weird beard or anything.
I want to
liked
see
him.
a Tellarite without tusks, though.
I do.
Just to let me know that they're out there.
Yeah.
PJ's been very quiet. I know he has stuff to say, but go on. Sorry.
Just one more thing about the admirals is why do they not have the new uniforms that they wear on the Enterprise?
Right.
Like, why hasn't Starfleet HQ converted to that?
Discovery doesn't care about that stuff. That's not important to them.
I think that
they also went to Talos 4 on a shuttle, and I feel like Talos 4 was very far away. Like the original series, they got the Enterprise out there on a 5-year mission or whatever.
I forgot. I had a critique on the. I thought that the shuttles, especially the long-range shuttles, worked on a similar principle to a warp core with the Bizarre ram scoops and like the Bizarre collectors rather, and like, you know, the intermix chamber and an antimatter matter reaction. But it made it seem like in the last episode that they ran on plasma, and that when you exhausted the plasma fuel that you ran out of fuel. But yet how are you getting like these great, it is true, like then the same class shuttle is able to traverse these great distances at warp. So I'm like, what is it? Is it a mini warp engine, or is it a mini plasma based engine? So I was a little confused.
It comes into another problem later on where Pike's all like, we need to spore jump to Telos 4 because why? Like you need to spore jump there because it's that far away. But then like,
well, no, it's a difference of a few hours versus
Spock and Burnham just went there like in a shuttle.
They also wanted to beat Section 31 there.
Okay.
Right. That was part of that too, I think.
They have Sonny from iRobot getting all mad on their vessel, shutting the spore drive down.
Sorry guys, I get tweet notifications whenever Patrick Stewart and so I just want to say that he has tweeted that medical cannabis is now legal in the UK, but too often patient access is cruelly denied. Visit endyourpain.org to email your MP urging them to act. End our pain, end our pain. So that was an activist moment about legalizing medical marijuana in the UK. Thank you.
So what do y'all think? What do you think are the odds that Sir Patrick Stewart is high right now tweeting that?
Not very high, I would reckon.
Because
he doesn't seem like a. Oh, do you think he's in? Oh, he might have like arthritis or some stuff.
He uses it for arthritis.
Okay.
Right, and he was very turned on by what he saw of the of the Star Trek Picard series. So maybe he was high when he was doing that.
He's going to be high the entire show.
That's why he's accepted it. That's why he accepted to come back, just because he's high now.
But I actually love, because just to clarify though, jokes aside, you don't necessarily get high off of medical marijuana. There are CBD type strains that have been cultivated to handle things like pain, etc., without the psychotropic effects are caused by THC.
I would assume that's what Sir Patrick Stewart uses.
Yes, I would assume that as well.
He uses,
but if he wanted to get high, I think it's cool also. Just personally, and I would love to get high with Patrick Stewart, just throwing it out there to the universe. All right, go on. Wow, that like derailed our whole discussion. Like you guys are just.
I got something to talk about. About we mentioned the 25% rule that I guess all that stuff started with John Eves, the ship designer, who one time gave us a Text Trek shout out on the Text Trek Facebook page. So that was cool.
Ooh, wow.
He said that he had to make the 1701 Connie that we see in Discovery 25% different, and that came from the legal department. And then he later said, like, oh, well, I'm not the best person to ask about this type of stuff. I don't really know what's going on. And CBS did this thing where they said, oh, no, we can use any version of the Enterprise. We own the rights to all of Star Trek. So I think what the situation is basically they do, for creative reasons, choose to make everything 25% different, but also for the capital reasons of they want to be able, they want to make the merchandise look different and have like a different license that you have to buy. If you check out Kit Walski's interview with PJ, isn't it Matt Kadish is his name?
Yeah.
they talk about that some in there, and so I think that might have been part of the decision to change the Telosians, just in case anyone wants to make a toy of a Telosian or a T-shirt of a Telosian or some piece of merchandise. They have to buy like a new license to be able to do it.
Little do they know they're going to sell less if they're not faithful to the original.
I would buy it.
Okay.
Actually, I would buy it too. I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, that does make sense because Eagle Moss, they do all the ships and whatever. So now they have to do all the new Discovery ships.
I have to have all the Enterprises.
Yeah. I have all the Discovery ships up there.
Look at you.
Nice. The detail that went into the Klingon stuff was perfect for merchandising. And if the Klingons had looked a bit more traditional in that same kind of like really cool 3D printed armor with this like fine detail to it, it would have enhanced what they were and not appeared so different. Yeah, changed.
I would not buy a T-shirt of the Disco Klingons though. Like
no, absolutely not.
Yeah, I would not.
But you would buy like a TNG style Klingon with that awesome like Discovery armor on him and done in a modern way.
And I think I also think here's where the actors actually like kind of like help to like with acceptance of these things. I would buy a Mary Chieffo as L'Rell shirt because I just like her. You know, like that's the thing. It's like I don't really like the idea. I don't really like the idea of how the Klingons are redesigned, but I do like Mary Chieffo.
We're going to see her again. Mary Chieffo said that L'Rell will return in season 2 of Discovery. So I'm hoping when she shows up, she has a fleet of D7s.
Yes.
I would love there to be some smooth-headed Klingons operating them.
I was expecting them to bring the smooth Klingons in and be like, guys, you started a war, you did all this shenanigans, just get lost now. Can you please stop with this? And like they established that these Klingons that we've been seeing have like they're from some sort of outskirts of the Empire.
Alex Kurtzman confirmed that they won't be doing that. They won't be introducing any of TOS style anything. He said in an interview that they'll only be dealing with the Klingons that we saw in the first season. And they did redesign L'Rell. They smoothed out her makeup or whatever. But they didn't do anything to every other Klingon around her except just add hair to the already piled on makeup. So
it is.
Well, maybe it is.
Well, what they could show is a variety. Over time, they could actually show a wide variety of different looking ones. They don't have to show just the ones they designed in season 1.
In season 5 of Star Trek Discovery, they'll fix the Klingons.
Yeah.
Well, from the I know they could have designed their own Klingons from the get-go, make them look so radical, but like just have Klingons from TNG, have Klingons from the original series as well. And
you know what they weren't legally allowed to do? The Neville Page's Klingon designs for Into Darkness, and we only actually saw the one guy. But if you look at the various Klingon designs, they're the best looking updated Klingons I've seen so far.
Yeah. J.J. Abrams specifically chose the one that looked completely hideous.
He chose the worst one.
Oh yeah, he chose the worst one. But if you see the other designs, you could actually see that as a proper update. But they couldn't do that in Discovery even if they wanted to. So I think that's part of the reason they might have gone more extreme with the design. Maybe
wasn't Neville Page? Isn't he involved with both? Right?
Yes, he's involved with both. Yeah. But legally, I don't think he can use what he used in the JJ verse.
He can just make it 25% different, and they can get away with it.
Travel to Talos is prohibited by Starfleet, but they don't mention General Order 7 specifically. Does that fit with how you got? Does that meet your expectations, or would you like to have heard about General Order 7?
I mean,
no.
The death penalty for going to Talos 4 always seemed weirdly harsh. So I'm okay with them just not mentioning it. And if I'm not mistaken,
there's a throwaway reference in TNG, isn't there, where there's like colonists that are going to Talos 4 or something like that, like which seems like that the writers didn't really like look into it, that they just wanted to say something, but like
Telosians died by then. They do establish that the Telosians are going to die.
Oh, okay. Where's that? Sorry.
They needed Pike and Vina to repopulate their planet.
That's right.
They needed a race who could like learn to operate their machines and
that's right. That's right.
take care of the planet. And without that,
a labor force. Yeah, exactly.
They even tell Pike at the end of the cage. They tell him that like yeah, you humans, you were our last hope for survival, but we see that you're too reckless to be caged, and we have to set you free.
That's right. I forgot about that. Thanks for the reminder. So yeah, so then TNG Talos 4 might be interesting because it's a human colony now. So we're like,
okay, I'm looking that up now.
Colony, rather.
Memory Alpha says in 2328, this talking about Talos 4, was the destination for passengers traveling to the Triskelion orbital station via commercial transport.
I just mentioned the Triskel earlier. Sorry, go on.
Brian Adams, Wednesday Adams. It's like the Adams family. Lord Beavens traveled on the SS Kojin, and Mike Eccles traveled on the SS Wisconsin. That was on a nocutogram. That wasn't actually mentioned, but it was in the TNG episode.
Gotcha.
It was just like on like a display somewhere. That's the episode where the mean lady kills the crystalline entity.
That's right. Oh yeah, that's right. Okay.
So you're
saying it's just in the background?
No. That's the one with Data's mom. That's the one where Data meets his mom. I get they're both like Data hanging out with like an old lady,
and also because she's all like pretending to be the son's mom because Data channels her son. Right. That's right.
Yeah. No, this is the one where Data had his mom come on board the ship, and it turns out she was an android also.
Your thoughts on the Stamets, Culber, Tyler?
Oh, I love when Culber goes into that cafeteria or the mess hall, and he walks up to the table and he just smacks that fucker like right across the room, and Saru's like, let them fight, and it was really good. I like how it ended. They kind of like embrace, and there's that understanding of like what does Culber say?
Well, he's
like, I don't even know who I am anymore.
Know who I am? And he's like, do you know who you're talking to?
Do you know who you're talking to, man? And then I thought they were gonna make out, but anyway, that didn't happen.
They looked like a real fight. It looked like
it did look like a real fight.
Brawl between two guys.
And they had a bro moment at the end. It was cool.
Are they setting up for Culber to go off to Section 31 with Tyler and be a character on the Section 31 show?
That would be so dark.
That would be good.
It would be so dark if like both. So Tyler's rejected by Burnham and by Pike because like he can't be with Captain Pike. So he goes and hooks up with Culber, and they like start a new relationship. And poor Stamets is like super like depressed because he's like, well, I got because Culber's still alive, but he doesn't love me anymore. And now he's with Tyler. The guy who
like
killed him in the first place.
I feel sorry.
I like the domestic exchange between them in their quarters.
Like from Stamets'
I'm having all the feels for that.
Like the way Stamets looks at it is he's like, I've done the impossible. Like I went down into hell and rescued you, and now we should be happy together. And he's
which
Culber,
is actually
Culber's like, this maybe is actually I belong kind of in hell.
Like,
yeah.
Well, the thing is that what's cool about this is that it's actually a great like rehab of an old archetype, right? Which is like the how like who was it that was trying to rescue someone from Hades back in the Greek mythology, and like he brings and the whole thing is like the one thing you can't do back, right? And then she looks back, and then that's it. It's ruined. It's like her like she can't ever be alive as a mortal again. So
sometimes
I forget what the
dead is better.
Wasn't that Persephone?
Persephone, thank you. Yes, and then there's this like compromise where Persephone only. Thank you. I know my mythology is a little rusty there, but you filled it in. I think that's what it was. That was the Persephone story. So I do like that. There's these like. Me too. My old brain is feeble. It's not as good as when I was your age, guys. But were you guys like pleased with the portrayal of Vina and how the actress did Vina and like the updates to Vina and everything like that?
Nope.
I think the new woman is the new actress. What was her name? Melissa George. I think she's a gorgeous woman, but she didn't look that much like Susan Oliver. And to be honest, I think Susan Oliver more embodied the like the ideal woman fantasy that Pike was having.
Yeah. And the way they made her look, like her like when they reveal how she really looks, the original version was a lot better. It was a lot
So
more
much
gruesome.
creepier. Yeah, it was more gruesome.
And
I
the
like
visual
that.
effect,
That.
and the visual effect that they used back then of the, that kind of fading effect was very well done. They did that in
It was like multiple. It was like
stages.
you went from like correct posture to like whatever. I noted that the sound design I thought was pretty awesome. How they like mixed like the old sounds with like kind of updated them, and they blended really beautifully. And Sean, you mentioned that like the new singing plant, but I thought they were like really cool. I think that like if the 60s design team could do like the singing plants today, they would do them exactly like that.
I like the plants.
Regarding the makeup of Vina when she's damaged, I thought it was really good. Like she has the same scar across her face. She has the same damage on the side of her face. The only really big difference is she's not like all like how she's got this huge lump on her shoulder or whatever in the
She's
cage.
Quasimodo.
Yeah, almost. But then you got to imagine that time passes between now and the menagerie. Oh no, it was the cage. It was the cage originally, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That she was like that. Okay.
I mean,
So
the menagerie.
she was maybe healed a little or something.
The menagerie reuses basically all the scenes from the cage.
All the footage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she should have been as damaged.
But that was like a flashback that was set to before the events of this episode when they used that.
She should have been as damaged in this episode as she was in the cage.
But maybe after they studied Pike in the cage, they were able to like
heal her.
Yeah, make her like a little bit better.
But she still has the scars or whatever. I'm okay with it. I enjoyed the fact that she had the same like facial problems.
I didn't think it was as gruesome as it looked in the original series, so I think they could have.
Why are the Telosians why are the Telosians so interested in Burnham and Spock's relationship, and in particular that memory of her rejecting Spock as a child?
That's what they do.
They have a desire for understanding everything about everything.
They basically, if the Telosians existed on Earth, they would be watching Big Brother like all day. Like they just want to like spy on people and like peek into their lives. That's their thing. Like
it's true.
Thing is logic. Klingon thing is honor. The Telosian thing is like spy on people, like watch their lives. Yeah. Creepos. Butthead creepos.
I didn't like how the Telosians in this episode didn't have that air of superiority that they had in the cage. They're kind of like really nice in this episode. I didn't like that. I like the story. I like everything everything in this episode on the page is good.
But they're nice in the menagerie because they Pike.
But in the cage
and say that
their own personal they have an interest in this. What they have no interest in this episode apart from maybe prying into Spock and Burnham's relationship.
I would have liked the Telosian to say Burnham, give us one of your memories or we will take it from you or something like that. I don't know. Just to be a little bit threatening.
Like I was saying earlier, where like the end of the cage, the Telosians learn that they're all gonna die. So they might have been like less assholey because they're not as preoccupied with like the survival of their race. They've kind of accepted their fate. And it might make sense that they're a little bit more benevolent now that they've looked into Spock's mind and they've seen that all life in the galaxy is going to be destroyed. So maybe they're thinking like, well, if our race is doomed, there's no reason for everyone else to be doomed. So we can.
That's a good point.
We can fix this guy and send him back, and maybe like Spock can go get his captain, and maybe they can.
Right.
Oh, maybe they can like save the galaxy, and then when they invite Pike back to come live with them in the menagerie. Maybe that was like to reward him for saving all the life in the galaxy in season 2 of Discovery.
Yeah, that would be a nice tie-in. Sounds pretty like spot on. there is one scene though where Vina does say, "Hey, you don't want them to force payment. It's not pleasant."
Yeah.
So she does hint at that they are capable of a darker
Of
way.
hostility of some sort.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Saru and Pike scene. Okay, Sean has to leave in a second, but really quickly, you have to give your rating before you leave. But I just want to point out that I really loved the Saru Pike scene post the fight, where he says basically like he's like, and like he kind of addresses the evolution thing with like maybe you wouldn't have made the same decision before, and then he says, but moving forward, the uniform code of conduct has to be the way. And I just love that scene. That's one of the reasons I love Pike so. Like he's such a refreshing like leader in terms of like how he's forgiving, but at the same time lays down the law. I love Captain Pike. Anyways,
I agree.
Yeah, he's great.
Sean, before you go, do you want to give your rating for this episode and any final thoughts, and then we can keep discussing, guys, if you guys want to.
Okay, so I give this episode an 8 out of 10.
Wow.
Because I think that the episode does work on its own, like regardless of all the canon tie-ins and like all of what it did with the cages and menagerie. I think the episode is a good episode. It finally explains a lot of things that are going on in this season. It gives us a good backstory to Burnham and Pike, Burnham and Spock. Sorry, I love everything they're doing with Culber. It doesn't bother me that Culber's kind of a side story to every episode because I think that the story is growing well. And I enjoyed his fight scene. I thought it was very well executed, except maybe at the end of the fight scene, both of them didn't seem too like exhausted. They seemed quite fine, but I think the episode was
in
good.
Incredibly good shape. But anyways, go on.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. But no, I really like the episode. I do have some problems with the visual, like I suppose, interpretation of the Telosians. But other than that, I think story-wise it was great. So best episode of Discovery Season 2 for me so far.
Wow. 8's high praise for you. So excellent.
All right. See you guys. Thank you so much for having me.
Hey, thanks for being on. And wait, one more thing. Sorry, one more thing. Enjoy your time in New Zealand. We're going to miss you for 5 weeks. 5 freaking weeks. It's insane.
I'll be on the Twitter.
Yeah, I know you'll be on the Twitter, but we like seeing your videos every week and stuff like that. Right, so it'll be cool when you get back. And unfortunately, yeah, you'll have a lot of work. So, but anyways, have a great time and live long and prosper. And we'll see you when you get back, sir.
See you guys.
Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right, so I only have a few more notes on this episode, but if you guys have anything to say, but we can kind of start wrapping up our discussion too, and give our ratings. But the last. I already talked about the tilt of the ships. I like the humor, like "Say goodbye, Spock." That scene that was really funny, and he's like, "Goodbye, Spock."
I liked the trick that they did there with the Because I was mad when they had like the transporter lock, and I was like, "Why aren't you showing Burnham and Spock right now, like being stuck in like a transporter lock, not going anywhere?" Like, Discovery, I hate it when you do this, when you don't show us the visuals of what's going on. Like, why won't you just show this to me? And then I'm like, oh, that's why. It was actually really clever what they did there.
Clever, yeah, it was pretty cool. And then I like the whole thing about riding into danger. Like seeing Spock and Captain Pike reunited just like gave me all the feels again. I know that's like a millennial thing, but it totally gave me that. And I loved it. I loved all of it, note for note.
But you got anything else on Discovery, or do we all need to give our ratings?
I guess I just have a question. The main question I have is like, what do you guys think, Philip, Emperor George? What's the deal with this character? Like, in the last episode, she claims to know Burnham better than Burnham knows herself. There's like definitely something going on where she Burnham, but I just don't buy it. Like, she seems like, like a solidly evil character. Are we looking at a redemption plot? And then when we get her in section 31, like, I just don't really, this is a lot of like gray area for me.
I don't want to see her redeemed. She can have like Darth Vader redemption and die in the process. I cannot have the person who ruled a fascist xenophobic empire, who exterminated entire planets, who ate people,
Right, she
then
admits in this episode, she's like, "Oh, I came across the Telosians in my universe. And after they tried their mind trick shit on me, I just blew them out. Blew them out basically. Like, so
I cannot have her be like the hero week to week, righting wrongs and doing good. She is too disgusting of a person. The only way she could really redeem herself would be to go back to the mirror universe and bring down the Terran Empire that has inflicted all of this pain on the countless worlds. And we know from Star Trek canon that doesn't happen. The Terran Empire is still a thing.
I have no interest anymore in the Giorgio show based on most of what you just said.
But if she's still like kind of a villainous character in the show, and I think there's other ways to make it work. But yeah, I do not want a Giorgio redemption story.
Fair. And then I think's gonna happen next week with Arium and the freaking crazy red through lights and like what's going on here. Like, do you guys have any more insider theories about like these 500 years from the future? What's going on? Yeah, it's like
that technology from the future that's now being used through Arium, I think is somehow going to infiltrate Section 31. And the next episode, they kind of go there and it's all shut down and something's wrong. And Arium, goes ballistic. So,
do you think they're going to put Arium down? Are they going to have to put?
She's gonna escape. She's gonna go off somewhere and she's gonna become something else. And
the Borg Queen.
Oh.
I
suspected that there were Borg ties, but I don't know.
One theory I have is, how early in this episode Giorgio says that she doesn't like taking orders from these computers and all this threat analysis software. And what if the Section 31 computers become like this advanced Skynet level AI? I think David Mack kind of had some novels about Section 31 about this, but they make this super advanced evil computer system in the future, and that's what sent the probe back in time.
It would be an interesting way to explain why in TOS and onward there is like less of an emphasis on like computers aren't developed to the level of data. Like until data comes along, we don't really see that level of advancement in positronic brains and like things like that. And like even though it is acknowledged that the Enterprise is AI, it does serve the crew rather than have its own thoughts and feelings and things like that. It's bereft of any kind of like sentience as far as we can tell, except for a few exceptions where like the story caused it to become more advanced. So maybe something does go out of control, and that explains why later on the Federation is like, oh no, yeah, we have to put a kibosh on this kind of technology or whatever, or they're reticent to use it.
They could also use it to erase all traces of Section 31 from all the computers, and that's why Cisco couldn't research them in DS9. No one had seemed to have heard about them, except for some
it is odd
Starfleet officials that would brush them off.
Yeah, it is odd how well or how involved Section 31 is. I like the scene where Captain Pike says, as much as it pains me to distrust a division of Starfleet, I hope we get to them before Section 31 does. So I do think things are being planted for Section 31 to go underground more, like to go deep underground. All right, that's all I got, guys. Anything else? PJ, you wanted to talk about the editing. I do want to talk about sound design was superb. So was the music in this episode. And I had an interaction with the editor on Twitter, and I thought editing-wise, just pure editing, like scene cuts and things like that, was great. I did think that the lens flares were overdone a little bit in this episode, but just, I'll let PJ, because I think you have some comments about that, right? Like you have some comments about just the visuals. Do you want to say that?
Certain directors of Discovery, they're allowed to do these things, right? They're allowed to do all the the weird angles. And all
it's like it's your visual.
But some of them that just take it to a level where it's just totally unnecessary. And if you look at a lot of scenes in this episode on the Discovery hallways and in rooms. It looks like somebody's burning toast in every room. It's like it's just a fog and a haze, and you watch other episodes and it's not filmed the same. There's different styles within each episode, and I just didn't like this director's style. But overall, like the story and the information we got and the acting was very on par. But just the visuals were a bit distracting for me. So
I didn't notice the smoke or the fog, but
it's a haze. It's a haze. It's more of a haze.
I love the lighting.
The lighting is weird.
I like the
I did notice this episode was different. I did notice this episode was different. What is God is the director, right? Of this episode, I think is the name of the director.
Yeah, TJ
but
Scott.
I actually, I liked some of the wider angles. I thought they went wider than they normally do with some of the angles, especially like at the end when Pike is like walking to the view screen facing off against Leland. Like the Discovery Bridge looked even more wide than it usually does. One thing I did love is that like ever since Interstellar, black holes are now portrayed like scientifically accurately, right? And so it had like kind of like that black hole, the Telosian illusion, looked a lot like the Interstellar black. Kind of love that. That was cool. Done, and it looked pretty cool. And then how like I love just again, there's just so much to talk about, but we gotta stay within a time frame. But I love how Spock wakes up from his like haze to like power down. Like he's like he just like has these moments of clarity, like fluid through time or whatever he's experiencing. I imagine it's not unlike how Commander Sisko was like interacting with the wormhole aliens. He's like going through these memories and he doesn't know where he is and stuff like that. But for a moment, he can like force himself back into the present moment. And I love that scene where he like Burnham's freaking out, like, what the hell are you doing? And and he has to like force her back, like he has to hold her back and force down the controls. It was just like a very scary, cool moment. It was nice.
It was good that they actually remembered that Vulcans are supposed to be way stronger than humans.
Yeah, that's true. I also love what's the martial art that the Vulcans use called again?
Susma.
Thank you. Like Spock executes so beautifully in that scene in the memory of the psychiatric ward. Like I mean, it's like he does the neck pinch in like such a quick, like it's just boom, boom, boom.
He's not really doing like a martial arts fight like Sonequa Martin Green would do, and I don't want him to do that because that's more of her thing than his thing. But it was more of in the same tradition of the original series where Spock wasn't really much of a fist fighter. He would do like the precise nerve pinch. Every now and then he would have to do like the double fist punch, the greatest attack in Star Trek history, the most powerful combo. Star Trek was like a Street Fighter type fighting video game.
Does that move have a name in wrestling or anything like that? Is that like something that
it's the two-handed punch?
Yeah, we call it the double fist punch.
Double fist. Yeah.
If you go back and watch some of our videos when me and Dave were captured by our mirror universe doppelgangers.
Oh, I gotta definitely go back to watch that.
Dave actually does a double fist punch on mirror universe fathery. It's in our opening credit sequence that we use on our videos now.
I'll check it out. I do know that, but like I'll check out the actual. I want to go back and look at the full thing.
Yeah, cool. we escape out of an agony booth. It's pretty.
Oh my gosh, I can't wait to go see that. That's that note, audience, pause this video and go check it out right away and come back. Now that you're back, you got to do that, right? Like you got that the audience actually did what you asked.
I'm assuming
so
they
now
always do.
Yeah. So now that you're back, audience, I think do you guys think it's safe to give close out and give our ratings and final?
Yeah, PJ, do you have anything else that you wanted to say, or are we ready?
We're giving our ratings now, right?
Yeah, okay. I think it's okay. Yeah.
So what did Sean give it? An 8?
He gave it an 8. I'm gonna give it a 10. Just predictable Starfleet boy here.
Okay, I'm gonna meet.
I love this episode. a lot, and I'm excited for the next one. Go on.
I'm going to come down in the middle between you and Sean and give it a 9.
Nice.
I am also going to give it a high score, a 7. Yeah,
What, 7?
a 7.
So
I would
I think
have
it's safe to give it.
given it a higher score if they only just. I was a lot of little nitpicky things like the visuals and the design choices I didn't appreciate. I like the amount of information we got though. So
I hated the shuttlecraft having a transporter was my nitpick, even though that doesn't explicitly violate any canon. It's just I've always thought of TOS shuttlecrafts as not having transporters. I thought that was something that didn't come along until Next Generation time, so that kind of bugged me. But other than that, I didn't have too many major complaints. I was okay with some of the visual changes, and yeah, there's so much I loved in this episode that I got to give it a 9.
I like the previous episode a little bit more.
Go ahead, sir. A little bit more. So this averages out to between I would say like between an 8.5 and a 9. So I'm gonna, as the ruling party here, I'm just gonna go ahead and bump it up to a 9. So our very first 9 average.
I always bring your scores down.
I know, thank you. It's probably fair.
Your average, I mean.
But I get but the chair outranks the bad, PJ.
Season 3, this is like kind of an example of like what would be par for the course in season 3 of Discovery. And now that we've kind of had the shakedown cruise of the first 2 seasons of Discovery, what if we can expect this type of quality from things like the Picard show and Lower Decks and Section 31? And
the next, I just want to say, I forgot, I meant to say this earlier. The next episode is 9, right? So that's going to be directed by Jonathan Frakes and written by Heather Paradise. Is it not Michelle Paradise? Michelle Paradise. I keep calling her Heather.
It's going to be a big episode. It's going to be huge because they bring back Frakes, and the writer of this episode got promoted to co-showrunner. So there's going to be some shit go down.
Yeah. What is the final count of this season? It's going to be 13 episodes?
14.
There's 6
14.
more.
Okay, so we're getting towards the final kind of like the home stretch is not yet here, but it's getting there. So that's cool.
And PJ, I think you might also know this, but Michelle Paradise is also supposedly written the last 2 episodes of the season.
Oh,
I never heard that.
Okay.
I looked back. I learned that she started her involvement in the show back in episode 4. I thought it was like much later. You look back at the credits, she appears after episode 3.
Like post-production stuff, though.
Oh yeah, but her role has definitely grown throughout the season, apparently.
Yeah, I mean, like she's co-showrunner now, so
yeah, and with this episode coming up, we're gonna really get to see what she's all about.
They said that she's very well versed in Star Trek lore, but I feel like they say that about every writer they hire. So.
Oh yeah.
But I'm definitely excited about checking out what she can bring to the table because they've definitely hyped her up. And I believe she's also writing the last 2 episodes of the season. And I think at least one of those, maybe both of them, are directed by, I have a hard time with his name, but it begins with the O.
Point of Light. He directed Point of Light.
Yeah, like Olatunde Osamni, or I'm probably saying it wrong, but something like that.
Well, I'm
he's kind of like
an interview, right?
He's one of the
exactly
on the show, and he's kind of like he's like the main director. He's kind of like the producer of directors. So I think that they're building up to a big kind of 2-part season finale, and maybe that'll finally be when we have a battle between Section 31 and the Discovery or something like that. You know, they haven't really shot any phasers or torpedoes at anything all season long, other than they shot a torpedo at Spock's shuttle when Giorgio was on it. Other than that, the Discovery hasn't really done like any violence.
I think that I have to say that I think that it was violence from season 1, so I'm really enjoying that it's a lot more exposition. And I do think that when they do restrain themselves, scenes that scene that you referenced in particular with the shuttle was awesome. It's just so tactically, it seemed really it was just a very cool kind of display of force and stuff. And And after all, Discovery Science vessel, it shouldn't be armed to the teeth like the other ships. Another ship might be.
War to fight in season 1.
That's right.
But yeah, I think it was intentionally trying to back off of the violence after season 1. So now if they're building up to like a big confrontation, it's going to feel so much more powerful because it's not something they're doing week to week.
Giorgio's definitely going to kill Leland. That's going to happen.
Well, she's gunning for his job, so she's trying to get
fired. But he seems to be he's a mixed bag because like if he Clarence death, like that's going to be an interesting reveal when Burnham finds out about it. She's going to go batshit crazy and like try to murder him herself. Well, lots of interesting things to see how they come to play. And like this episode, I don't think we talked about it in our discussion, but like they basically meant the admirals say like Burnham has committed treason again. Like they're like so she's already kind of on the radar again to like lose her rank. So it's kind of like an interesting thing lay out. But I am excited and interested.
They're all on the run now. They've all committed treason by the end of the episode. They've all agreed to mutiny.
That's a Star Trek tradition, though. Like sometimes you gotta hijack the Enterprise and go save Spock.
Hell with our orders.
Yeah,
it's a hell with our orders. Anything to promote, guys? Anything going on that you want to talk to my audience about? Our audience here.
Sure, you can follow me on Twitter at TXTrek, and be sure to check out Text Trek on our YouTube channel, as well as our audio-only podcast. You can get all the information on that at text-trek.com. Please, by all means, like us on Facebook, facebook.com/text-trek.
Excellent. And PJ?
You can find me on Twitter at PJ's Channel 1 or on YouTube, Botrek. That's boat like a boat and rec, R-E-K.
Which I love when I figured that out finally. I was like, that's cool. All right, excellent. Yeah. Everyone can find Sean, who was just on, at Trek on the Tube, and it's also Trek on the Tube on Twitter, and he'll be on a hiatus for 5 weeks, which will be cool. So what I like about that is we'll see more of you guys hopefully on the next couple episodes, and I'm going to try to be more organized.
We will try to keep his seat warm while he's gone.
I'm also trying to get more organized to do these like bigger group discussions. It's hard. It's hard to coordinate when you get a full-time job, but I think I'm starting to get the hang of it. So hopefully we'll see you guys on more in general. And I appreciate your time and your thoughts because I got some insights that I didn't have before. And even though I maintained my 10 rating on this episode, Starfleet Boys giving out a lot of 10s like they're just freebies here. It's like, and prosper, and we'll see you guys next time.
Later.
Peace.